How many reservoirs are in Griffith Park?
Including the ones they're building?
Well, they just built a new one.
Are we counting
But
water tanks?
the water tanks. How many water tanks are there in Griffith Park?
Hold on. I feel like I should know this. There's at least 12.
It's 21.
Okay.
Wow.
Oh, which is
Not including the new one over by Forest Lawn. That's a huge. That's 22. And last year I did, or not last year, maybe 3 years ago, I did a wilderness travel course hike where we hiked around and we hit 11 of those water tanks.
Wow.
And we did a hike around Griffith Park and we got to 11 of those water tanks.
It's like on a map, all those things are shown on a
I
map.
don't know. It's huge. My poles hit each of those tanks.
Is it on a map? Is that how you guys were navigating,
They're-
looking for water tanks?
It was
Or you just,
it was Virgil Shields and Ann, his wife. They led the hike, and there was probably about 7 or 8 people. And it was right after I graduated from WTC. So
if
water
people
tank
don't know
tour.
about it, there's this huge reservoir that's being built over by Forest Lawn on the north side of the
It's already built.
Yeah, and so it's half buried. Some of it they're going to landscape on top. And the whole purpose for that reservoir is to replace the Silver Lake Reservoir, which can no longer be used for drinking water because it's open. So there was a big consideration when they, the federal government has mandated that you cannot use open reservoirs for drinking water unless it will be treated afterward. And so they had to shut it down. And then once they did, they had to decide what are we going to do with this area. There were a lot of choices. They could have just turned the whole thing into a park and paved it over. However, the neighbors were very strongly in favor of maintaining it as a lake. So it's now just an artificial recreational area lake, which all sounds good. We all have to be aware that anytime there's a lake, that you lose lots of water through transpiration every day. So in effect, it essentially is wasting water, but it's very pleasant and nice. And so it just exists for that aesthetic reason now. And its purposes have all been moved to this very expensive and invasive concrete reservoir that they built.
Right near the freeway. Right near the freeway in Forest Lawn as you're driving by it on the right side as you're going. Yeah, it's a it looks like a park. They paved it over and planted it. They dug it all out, and it just shows that the amount of effort they can put into something when they want to. They can do all kinds of huge projects. I mean, I live in that area somewhat, and the number of dump trucks every day that were coming through to excavate that whole thing was incredible for months on end. So when the will is there and the money, they can move mountains.
Yep. And do,
yes.
Was to cover over some of the reservoirs, and I went on one of those reservoir tours where they walk around the Silver Lake Reservoir and some of the other reservoirs. They cover over some of these open reservoirs with these plastic balls.
Yes, they do that in
They plastic balls. I think
stops the evaporation.
Well, it stops the evaporation, but it doesn't allow stuff to come down onto them. So these balls are floating on the top of the reservoir, which is kind of weird.
But does that make it count as a closed reservoir that they're able to use it
I
then?
guess they're trying to.
They had them in Silver
They're
Lake.
trying to do something to get around it. I don't know.
No, it's just
They don't want
get
to
rid of
contaminate it.
evaporation.
They don't want to
Right, but it doesn't qualify as
No, it's not safe.